guess.
Am I here?
Yes, you are. I think
Mm.
you are here, and I think we are now actually live, going out to the viewers. So hello everybody. Now we are actually properly live. So hello everybody, and hopefully my OBS is configured properly today. I did have some issues there, so sorry about the small delay on the stream. So hello, Hotshot. Hello,
Hello.
hello, Piggis.
Hello?
I should really check my levels on this thing, just in case they're totally out of whack. Let me check that. Okay, if I
Mhm.
increase a small bit, I think. Oh, that might be too loud. I think that's a good level for my levels. But if you're watching, please tell me if I'm a bit too loud, a bit too quiet, because I don't want that to be the case throughout the stream. I do kind of want to know. So if you can, then please inform me on that, just because that's always helpful. In fact, yeah, thanks if you do that. I'm just trying to fix these windows now just before we get started. Okay, so this is annoying. I think I will have to reconfigure the uh the notes. I'll just have to get rid of the current window for a second, and I will just have to change the way this is configured. Okay, so 1 second, guys. Okay, nothing. In fact, I should probably um do something. Ooh, I should probably change the input while I do this, just because. Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna have to quickly do that just to get rid of this the notes here and actually fix them before we get started here. Sorry for the delay once again. I did not intend this to happen. Changing resolutions on monitors is not always the best idea if you want to get off to a prompt start with your show. Because, yeah, it can mess around with OBS. It can mess around with the streaming software. So, yeah. Anyway, while we wait here, how are you, Hotshot?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Any interesting news you heard about this week that you think might be good for the show?
Not really, no.
Okay, cool.
I heard the news that
Oh,
Sandro forgot to send the notes.
oh, I heard that news, and I forgot that news. Okay, so yeah, so I will. I don't worry, Piggis. I'll send you the notes now. Sorry about that one. I need to. I'll send the notes out in the chat. In fact, then both of you can see these notes, and anybody else who comes over to the Discord. sandrolinux.com/discord to actually get to the Discord, and you can chat on there if you want to comment on something, one of the tech news stories. Feel free, and turn up to the Discord server, and you can join the community podcast channel. So yeah, so we do a voice call every week when we do the show, so you can talk about the tech news on the show live. Okay, so you should have the notes there, guys. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And yeah. Okay, so what I do need to. I'm sorry about this, guys. This is, sometimes things mess up on the OBS side, so we just need to deal with that just before we get started. Let me
I'm gonna
see.
go make some coffee.
Yeah, take advantage of the break here. Although I feel like we'll be getting started in like about a minute. Yeah, you probably could make coffee in the time that it took. So yeah, so let's get started. I think the windows are configured. Now let me just move them. The windows are still a bit weird, but you know what? We'll just have to deal with it, guys. Yeah, you can still hopefully see the notes properly, and that's what matters. So we'll get started now. So are you there, Hotshot? Oh, did you actually
I think she's gone.
actually went to make coffee?
Yeah, but I'm still here.
Oh,
But I
okay.
have pushed off.
Cool. It's an interesting time to be drinking coffee, but uh, let's 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 talk about the tech news. Why don't we? I feel like yeah. So now I've got the Windows fully set up. We can start talking about the tech news. So, hey guys, welcome to the Sandro Linux Community Podcast. If you are watching the recording, so let me just do myself a quick favor here. There were some stories that are from a previous week. Just need to delete them out here. No, some of these are not, are not being covered this week because we covered them in a previous week's show. So if you didn't catch that, you can watch back over the previous week's show after this one, guys. So yeah, so we do a podcast every week, so make sure to tune in every week if you want to. Okay, so let me just delete this. Oh yeah. I think I've deleted the stuff that we do not need for this show. Okay, so let's get started with the first story. So this is the one that's quite big right now. I mean, it's quite a big story because Nintendo, of course, have a history of trying to get rid of emulation, and now they appear to have a sort of another victim. So apparently, Nintendo sued this emulator Yuzu, and they were a Switch emulator, and apparently, yeah, they sued them, and they basically just gave up. So Yuzu, they have officially stopped development on the project, and they have officially pulled the project from their website and from their GitHub. And, there is some arguments to do with the fact that they did actually have a paid tier for early access to certain features. So that is one thing to consider. It wasn't totally free. However, of course, some people will argue that Nintendo shouldn't be suing people who are just trying to help people have a better experience with their games. Of course, Nintendo would argue, it's their intellectual property. They can do what they want with their own games, and people don't have the right to emulate these games. However, of course, there are many people in the tech community who are a fan of emulation, and yeah, of course, if you have legally obtained ROMs, then you can, of course, do emulation. However, of course, I'm not going to advocate on this podcast for you using illegal ROMs because, that would be actually, not allowed. But, but yeah, of course, you know, you can do what you want, but this is quite a big story for those in the gaming community. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? It's pretty bad for people who like Switch emulators. This was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think they did the right thing to sue them actually.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I personally don't really have much of an opinion on this one, because on one hand, I'm all for emulation, but on the other hand, I do acknowledge the fact that this is quite an old, this is quite a new console to actually be making emulators for. It's not like an N64 or like a Sega Genesis or something like that, where they're much older consoles. You might not be able to get all the games for them anymore, and you know, maybe it's fair that you would, you know, get ROMs for those systems and, you know, load them up using emulators. However, this is a very recent console. This is current generation, so I can see where Nintendo is coming from, given they do currently sell some of the games that they are actually allowing you to emulate with this emulator. So yeah, so of course, you know, if Nintendo or whatever games company no longer sell a certain game, then I think it's fair if somebody wants to emulate that game. However, of course, if somebody, you know, if they're actually not selling the game anymore, and you know, if they're actually still selling the game, I mean, excuse me, and yeah, if they're still selling the game, then you probably shouldn't be emulating it, because you know there is a legit way you could be getting the game. However, of course, you know, there's all sorts of moral arguments there, but from the legal side, yeah, I think, you know, Nintendo can of course sue these emulators, and yeah, they clearly won in this case.
Mhm.
Although there wasn't really much opposition here. I mean, you know, they kind of just gave up very quickly. And yeah, they do want the destruction of all copies of Yuzu. Apparently, the developers have agreed to that. However, of course, you can download a copy. You're not going to be able to delete it from every single hard drive on the planet. That's unrealistic. However, of course, they will be able to get rid of most downloads of the software. Yes. But yeah, so if you're Nintendo, please don't sue me for talking about emulators. Anyway, but yeah. Do you want to move on to the next story, guys? Do you have any thoughts on this?
No, not really.
Cool. So let's move on to the mobile news. So, Android. There's only really one story I want to talk about. Really one story, you know, today that really grabbed my attention, and that is Lineage 18.1 has officially reached EOL, the end of life for it. So this is a final security patch, with them discontinuing their Android 11 ROM. So this is because Google has actually discontinued security updates for Android 11 in general. So of course they cannot maintain the ROM without the security updates. However, this will be pretty bad for those of you who use Lineage, who run a bit of an older phone, and if you don't have access to anything after 18.1, this is pretty bad news for you. Now, of course, you can always kind of explore other ROMs. However, Lineage is quite a big ROM, so if Lineage does not support your system, most ROMs won't support your system, because a lot of ROMs are based on Lineage. So I would say if your phone is no longer supported by Lineage, it is not a good sign for ROM support. Now, of course, many of you guys may not really care about Android, ROMs. You know, you might not even know what they are. So of course, Android ROMs are basically just custom software for your phone, so you can run like a different OS, sort of. But yeah, of course, there's a community around that. There's, you know, all of the kind of modding community, which in recent years has become less and less active, but is still present. And yeah, I really do enjoy stuff like that. So it's sad to see, of course, you know, the end of life of this particular release of Lineage. However, of course, that is normal when it comes to the life cycle of Android versions. Do you guys have any thoughts? Do any of you run Lineage on this build?
No.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what is the, you know, the EOS version that you're currently running, Biggest? Is it, yeah.
Fairly old.
Yeah, is it Android 11?
No, I think it's 10.
Oh, okay, so it's already reached EOL quite a while ago then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. The last update was over a year ago.
Okay. So that,
Mhm.
yeah, that's not the best for security, I don't imagine, but sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are no new updates. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the problem in general, you know, just get a new phone is the only solution to that one, I suppose. Or
Mm-hmm.
or you can try and make like, if there are certain ways that you can try and get like newer versions of Android onto your phone, but it takes quite a lot of work, I
Like if
imagine.
I were to build it myself,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, you could. You could become one of those
Oh,
people who do.
yeah.
Take a lot of time though.
It would take a lot of time, and maybe I don't want to use my main phone for debugging if stuff actually works.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong with testing random software on your phone? I mean, if you accidentally brick your phone and you can't call anybody, and you know,
Mhm.
yeah, what could go wrong there? Anyway, do you use a custom ROM hotshot, or I don't think you would, but yeah.
Nah, I don't.
Yeah, it's a bit of a niche thing, but a lot of people do enjoy doing stuff with their Android phones when it comes to ROMs. So you know, it's always nice to cover stories when it comes to that. Anyway, moving on here to the next story, the iPhone section. So Epic Games has said that Apple will reinstate their developer account, clearing the path for Epic Games Store on iPhone. So this is exciting times for you Fortnite fans and for fans of other games made by Epic. So this is, of course, you know, a bit of an assumption that they'll actually allow them to launch the Epic Games Store. But of course, with the latest DMA changes to the Digital Markets Act, which we seem to have been talking about for the last like few months. So so how long do you think we've been talking about this, PS? I mean,
I
the
think it's more than just a few months.
has it been a year or something like that? That's sad. I mean, anyway, but this piece of legislation, I mean, like, we've been talking about it like almost every single week. But anyway, I guess it has wide-reaching implications, I suppose. Do you think
But
it's?
is this just only for EU or?
Yeah,
Mm.
it's unclear by this post. But if the European Commission is reinstating their developer account, I imagine this won't be for you non-EU users. However, I could be wrong there. It could end up being a wider thing, but they are reinstating the Swedish subsidiary of Epic Games. Epic Games Sweden. So Epic Sweden AB. So yeah. So that's good news if you're a fan of any of the games made by Epic Games, or if you just want to try out their game store on your iPhone. Perhaps that might soon be a possibility. Do you have any thoughts, Hotshot, or anybody else?
No, not really.
Mm-hmm. So, moving on to another gaming story here. So, the previous one was sort of a gaming story, sort of an iPhone story. This is purely gaming. So, EMU Deck is now apparently going to have some more emulators. So, we were previously talking about how emulators are being shut down. So, it will not include Yuzu or Citra because they've been shut down. But yeah, if you're into emulating old games, so if you enjoy your PS2 games, if you enjoy, some of your older games, so that's what's advertised in, this little thumbnail here. So if you enjoy some of those older games, this could be a pretty cool use of a Steam Deck. So a lot of people enjoy these retro games. So if you can get the buttons on the Steam Deck mapped to the controls on different games, then of course this could be a very capable emulating device. So yeah, so apparently it will support Flycast, which is a really good Dreamcast emulator. I've personally used it before. It works really well. And there's also some other ones that are being supported here, including 2 different ones for arcade machines. So, that's very specific. And also one for the Atari Jaguar. So that's quite an old console there. Yeah.
They won't remove the Yuzu emulator from already installed versions.
Yeah, I mean, Yuzu say that they want to see the total destruction of their copies in compliance with Nintendo's, demands. However, this is not really going along with that. They are, this developer is allowing this to continue on if they, if you already have the install. So I suppose that's just their initiative. Hopefully they don't end up seeing any legal consequence to that. I can't imagine they will, but, knowing Nintendo, you never know. But yes, moving on to the desktop news here, and, I will remind you guys that, of course, if you want to, you can comment in the live chat on the YouTube video about any of these stories. Do feel free to comment. And, I check those after every story. So, yeah. So, Google Chrome will apparently now let you install any website as a desktop app on, these desktop platforms. So, Chrome Canary has added this feature, and it was spotted by a user on Twitter, or X, as it's now known. So, this is a pretty cool feature if you wanted to, use and interact with a site without having to open up the browser and actually look it up. It's a lot easier if you constantly go to a certain website. So you could now add all sorts of websites as apps. So you could add my website as an app, even though I no longer have a PWA for it. So even though some websites don't actually have a full web app, you can actually install them as web apps now. So that's pretty cool. Do you have any thoughts, either of you, on this? Do either of you use desktop web apps, or is that not a thing that you would use?
I generally don't really use them on desktop.
Yeah. I mean, it is much more of a thing for those mobile platforms, so I can see why, you wouldn't really use them on desktop. I would say, yeah, I don't either.
Most is like I've used the Discord web app a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's about it.
yeah. That sometimes has some features that you kind of need, and sometimes you kind of need to use the Discord web app, especially for doing stuff with bots and stuff like that on servers. Sometimes you need Discord on the web.
Screen sharing on Wayland.
You know what? That's a Linux issue. That's a very specific issue to your Wayland configuration, I imagine. As in, if you use Wayland, then I suppose that's something you have to deal with. If you use X11, perhaps you don't have as many problems. I don't know. So I guess that's a trade-off, you know.
It's Discord's fault.
Yeah, it probably is, but they've decided not to patch it, so I guess you have to deal with that if you run that specific desktop environment, desktop manager thing. Yeah. Anyway, Hotshot, do you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
No, nothing.
Okay. So we're moving on to the miscellaneous news. So some random news this week, as in it's a bit kind of jumbled up. So there's some, quite sad stories in here, as well as some, all right ones. I mean, none of these are really spectacularly, happy or, well, exactly. Yeah. But the first story we got to talk about today is that Dragon Ball's creator, Akira Toriyama. I'm gonna, I'm sorry if I pronounce that wrong. But he has died at the age of 68. So he was a very well known, and is a very well known anime writer. So he came up with Dragon Ball. So he wrote the Dragon Ball stuff. And of course, that is a massive manga series and franchise. I mean, it went on to have all the TV shows, all the movies, and really it has become larger than just the books. And of course, there's Dragon Ball, the original, and then there's Dragon Ball Z, and then all of that stuff. And of course, yeah, it just became a massive deal. Loads of people read the Dragon Ball mangas, and I've read some of it as well. And yeah, it's sad to see this person's passing. And it's of course very sad for the Dragon Ball community. Do you guys have any thoughts? Have either of you read the Dragon Ball series of manga or watched any of the Dragon Ball stuff? Okay, so yeah. So moving on to the next story. So despite it distancing itself from politics, Threads can't move away from it. So apparently, with the place that Twitter is, with the place that most of these platforms are like, it is very hard to move away from the kind of political space that people love to use their platform to kind of get out their political messaging. Of course, campaigns love using social media, and people really want to get out their message to the world. However, of course, politics is not everybody's cup of tea, and really, I can see why Threads wanted to distance themselves from politics. It does not really attract the youth. It's not really going to get them that many younger people, signing up to their service. Of course, it will get some of the kind of traditional users of Twitter. However, that is not always the base that Threads would want. Because, of course, the Instagram kind of user base is a lot more kind of younger compared to Twitter, and of course they do want to distance themselves from potential controversy. That's another take, I suppose. However, of course, it is also that they do want to be popular with younger users, and being a very politicized platform may not help them with that end. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Do either of you use Threads right now? I mean, it seems like an interesting platform, at least. Okay. So moving on to the next story here. So, Sonos is apparently just about to take on the AirPods Pro. So, the AirPods Pro was a pretty big, new product for Apple. Not AirPods Pro, what I'm talking about, AirPods Max. So, of course, the AirPods Max was a pretty big product for Apple. Them actually introducing their own headphone line. Pretty big news back when it was released. However, now FCC documents suggest, these little documents here, suggest that Sonos will actually be coming out with a kind of a competitor to it. And it doesn't reveal the exact design here, but we can see the kind of idea. And of course, other headphone makers will try and challenge Apple and actually release better headphones with some of the features that Apple were using to attract users. However, of course, not everybody wants a pair of Sonos headphones, and Apple has that brand recognition. So I'm not sure if it will be able to get the same success as Apple if they target the same price point. Do you guys have any thoughts? Did you like the look of the AirPods Pro, the AirPods Max back when they came out, or did you think they were a bit too expensive for what they were?
Yeah, but that's like every other Apple product.
I thought it was particularly kind of a bit of an egregious example of that, to be fair. Because some Apple products, like the Macs, for example, sometimes they're competitive with Windows devices on certain things. Of course, sometimes with the spec upgrades, it stops being so competitive. However, if you are looking for headphones and, you looked at the AirPods Max, you would see the fact that Sony had very comparable XM5s, which, had a lot of features quite similar to the AirPods Max. But the AirPods Max cost, like $200 more back when it was released. So that was a pretty big example of Apple charging more for their products. However, that is kind of the expected thing from Apple. Anyway, moving on to quite an interesting story, I suppose. It depends on whether, what you think about this, but Microsoft apparently is alleging that Russian state-sponsored hackers keep trying to infiltrate them. So far, they say their source code and other internal systems have been targeted. So this is apparently a report that was filed with the US SEC. So they are saying that some of the intellectual property was stolen, clearly. As in, maybe not stolen, but at least, targeted. And this is, of course, not really too much of a surprise, of course. Many companies are targeted by foreign state-sponsored actors, and of course, with different foreign adversaries of the US, they are, of course, going to try and hack into, different US tech companies. However, it is always interesting to see these reports, and we'll just have to see what comes of them. Do you guys have any thoughts on this story? Okay, no. Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not really much of a kind of surprising story. Of course, this is the kind of stuff that's in the news all the time. However, it is interesting to see that Microsoft is saying it may have targeted their source code. Perhaps they were looking to see whether they could get some of Microsoft's products and maybe replicate them. Who knows? There's all sorts of stuff that could have happened there. Any other comments on this? Okay, so moving on to the next story here. So, Spotify is set to increase prices in France over a new tax. So, are you glad not to live in France here, Piggis? I mean,
I'm not sure.
you would have to pay more for Spotify then. I don't know. Well, of course, this is of course a new tax. You can debate tax policy, of course. All you like, this is a politics show. I don't really want to get involved in that. But, of course, Spotify are increasing prices over this new tax, saying it is affecting their kind of margins, I suppose. This will hurt their margins. So they do want to, of course, rake in some more money here by, increasing the prices, getting a little bit more off these French users. And apparently they say this could raise up to 15 million euros this year. So that's pretty big news. Oh, wait, no, it won't raise them 15 million euros. It will actually raise, these taxes will raise 15 million euros for the music industry. So I suppose this is nice for artists, yeah, so of course, that's the tax policy side of things. I don't really want to get too, caught up in that. I'm not, into French politics, but yeah, so Spotify say apparently the tax is misguided. Of course, the French government would say otherwise. And of course, artists, might like the money, but of course, Spotify are trying to make more money here. I mean, they do not want to have their margins cut here. So, you can see why they're increasing their prices. However, some people would argue, why don't you just pay your fair share to artists? Of course, Spotify would argue they don't get that much money. As in, they're not very profitable, I mean, compared to some companies. Do you guys have any thoughts? Okay. So, Nikon is apparently acquiring US camera manufacturer Red. So, Red will become a subsidiary of Nikon as it tries to expand into the digital camera market. So, this is pretty big news. Nikon, a very big camera brand, and Red, very big in the cinema space, in the film space. This is a pretty big deal for the camera and for the, that industry. So, yeah, so this is big news in that sense. However, of course, some people might be worried about this, where this could go. Will Nikon end up messing up the Red brand? Could this lead to the potential for Red actually going a bit downhill? Could this lead to the end of Red being kind of one of the premier flagship kind of cinema film camera companies? Who knows really, but we'll have to see how this pans out when it comes to the business side of things. Do you guys have any thoughts? Do you either of you have a Nikon camera? I mean, I used to personally, but I'm guessing you guys don't have a Red camera. I mean, Red cameras are very expensive, but Nikon's a decent consumer cameras, to be honest. Anyway, moving right along to the next story here. So, Ivory for Mastodon is adding quote tweets to iPhone, iPad, and Mac. So, if you're on the Apple platforms, you can now see these quote tweets. So, that is good news for those using Mastodon and this client. It looks pretty sleek. I personally might, check it out maybe one day because this does look pretty nice. However, I think it's a paid client. I will clarify that one. But of course, if you enjoy the Fediverse, maybe it's worth it to pay. But of course, not for everybody. No, it's free. Okay, but there are some in-app purchases. So, your mileage may vary when it comes to the pricing, I suppose. Anyway, do you guys have any other thoughts on this story? Any other stories you want to talk about? Any news from the Foundation side of things, Piggis?
Nah.
Nah, is there nothing really happening over with the Foundation? Has there been any meetings recently or nothing?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So I suppose we don't really know what's going to happen with the future of the Foundation, whether what's the kind of timeline looking like for the reincorporation of the Foundation? Is that a thing that's close on the horizon, or a bit further away?
I don't really know. Like, we don't really have like a time plan for it.
Okay.
See.
Yeah. So is it just sometime in the near future, or
Hopefully.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So we still don't even know who owns Odysee, do we?
No.
Yeah. So that is. I'm honestly surprised at this point we don't already know. It's been quite a while since that happened. So yeah. We could hope for more transparency from Odysee when it comes to their ownership. However, they have not been so forthcoming.
I mean, there were one person on the library Discord from the Odysee team that talked about something soon is going to happen. A big announcement. But I don't know when.
Okay, so sometime in the future there'll be a big announcement. We'll just have to wait and see for that one, I suppose. Also, hello, Sylvana's husband. I forgot to say hello earlier on. Hello, from the live chat. One story I nearly forgot to cover, because I, didn't have it in my notes, and I will cover both of them. Don't worry. So one interesting story here. So apparently, there are claims from Ming Chi Kuo, quite a renowned Apple leaker, quite a reliable source in general. So one of the most reliable analysts on Apple, is saying they are working on foldable MacBooks with 2 screens. Wow, this could be an interesting product. So apparently, we have seen stuff like this before with the Lenovo Yoga Book and the ZenBook Fold. However, of course, Apple doing something like this would be very big news because they haven't come out with many foldable devices. So if they come out with something with touch, then that could be very big and very big for the laptop space in general. Do you guys have any thoughts? I mean, if Apple...
I mean, it looks
Yes, sir.
pretty cool, but I don't know how useful it would be.
Yeah, I mean, if Apple do it, it's probably
Or-
bound to have some users. I mean, come on. Yeah.
I mean, for artistic uses, Like,
I mean,
sure.
imagine that with an Apple Pencil. I mean, you could
Mm.
be doing some drawing. You could be getting, watching a YouTube video on the side. You could, there's some use cases, I suppose, for such a thing. However,
Did you know you could connect a second monitor?
but guess what? It's Apple. It's not, connect a second monitor. I mean, what's a computer? I mean, how are we? No, but Apple, of course, they're not really a big fan of stuff that's seen as clunky. Historically, of course, Steve Jobs was a bit of a perfectionist, I suppose. Trying to, create a certain experience for users. And of course, using an external display is not everybody's forte. And yeah, I suppose, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So yeah. Do you have any other thoughts? I mean,
No.
I'm kind of just bracing myself for the kind of impact of the price tag. Gonna be like,
Mhm.
and for $50,000. No, I think it'll be like I think it'll be like probably like $2,000 or something. Who knows? But it will probably be more expensive. But it will of course be worth it for some people, and people will be willing to give it a try, give it a whirl. And I think we might see a success with Apple doing this.
I wonder how ergonomic it would be to have a device like this.
Yeah, I imagine the ergonomics probably aren't the greatest. However,
Mhm.
not. I would say Apple's users. I mean, a lot of them kind of just like Apple products, and they like the kind of elegance of it, and they like the brand. So maybe ergonomics won't factor too much into things. However, of course, not
Mm.
being able to, carry this around that easily and stuff. I mean, the ergonomics of, having to type on, I suppose, a touchscreen, that might not be great for a laptop. And of course, if you're carrying it around, there's basically two screens, double the risk that you could crack a screen. Apple Care, but yeah, so we, so we'll have to see how
They
this goes.
care.
Yeah. Yes,
Mm.
Apple Care, if you pay. But yeah, I suppose you'll be able to get Apple Care Plus for this. Hopefully, I forget which story it
Mm.
was. What was it again? It said Apple wouldn't actually cover Apple Pay for it. As in, not Apple Pay, they wouldn't cover Apple Care for it. I mean,
Wasn't that the headset?
yeah, I think it was the Pro. Yeah, I think it was the headset. The Vision Pro. So
Mhm.
hopefully they don't do this. Hopefully they don't do this for the this laptop, because if they do, that'll suck if you break a screen and then suddenly you have to pay out of pocket for that. That will be pretty annoying. However, I can't see them doing that. Of course, with their main product lines that they would usually give Apple Care Plus. However, we're not exactly sure whether they will with this product.
I need to make a phone call. I might be back later.
Okay. Thanks for, talking with us, Hotshot, today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And of course, thank you everybody listening, for listening today. We have one more story to cover before we end here. And that is that Instagram, and all the big meta platforms were down for 2 hours recently. So there was a bit of an outage, a bit of a whoops from Meta here, I suppose. Meta's big social media platforms were down for a while. So Facebook, Instagram, and Threads were down. And yeah, this is pretty bad for users of those platforms. However, I didn't notice. Many other people probably didn't notice who don't use those platforms. However, of course, if you're an Instagram user or a WhatsApp user, then you probably will notice. However, apparently WhatsApp wasn't affected here. Correction. It was Messenger affected, not WhatsApp. And I don't know how Threads. Oh yeah, Threads was affected. Yeah, I understand that. But yeah, so of course, if you use those platforms, then you will have been affected by this. However, I did not notice this as I am not a user of any of these specific platforms. Do you have any thoughts, Piggers?
Mhm. There was this other story about this, because a lot of people went on to other platforms during this period, and that post talked about how people were thinking the world would end.
Well, the world didn't end, I suppose. Yeah, so, of course, there's all that kind of stuff that can happen. People kind of freak out when they can't access their social media or the internet. But, of course, there have been bigger outages before. Cloudflare went out once. That was pretty big. So they've had some outages. Google has outages sometimes. And, those are always big because people rely on Google for all sorts of stuff. And of course, if AWS have an outage, that affects almost, what is it? What's the statistic again? Isn't it something like, what percentage of the internet uses AWS? I swear it's like a really high percentage.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's high.
Yeah, so of course, if AWS goes out, all the connected platforms kind of go out. So of course, if you're using Versal, or if you're using Netlify, or if you're using any of these other platforms that repackage AWS, you're still going to be affected by this. Of course, all sorts of different governments rely on AWS. And yeah, of course, it would be pretty bad if AWS goes out. However, it does always highlight the importance of decentralization in some respects, that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket, and that we do have some decentralization to platforms. Because right now, I think it's slightly ridiculous that, we, not platforms like the web, I suppose. Because right now it's a bit ridiculous that, a few companies that could have an outage, and then half the internet's down. That's not a good situation. That isn't really the vision of the web that I think Tim Berners-Lee was looking for. He was looking for a place for information, not a place where a few companies own the entire internet. And I suppose we'll have to see where that goes. But once again, guys, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Check out sandrolinux.com for the latest from me. And, of course, you can also go to sandrolinux.com/discord to join the Discord server. So we discuss stuff every week on this podcast. So please join if you want to. And once again, guys, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye, guys.